Welcome back, everyone. This is the final segment of the third Merdeka Award Roundtable. We've talked about human capital as a key factor in the task of building a globally competitive Malaysia, and we've looked at some of our successes. Now we take the discussion to the future. So this is our chance, I suppose, now to wrap up a little bit. And before we go into the future, I actually want to go back into the past to get a sense of if our fundamentals, our foundation, is something that we can have comfort in. Are we secure? Macroeconomic, our institutions, legal institutions, our management, for instance, of our public finances.
Yeah. Malaysia, to me, we have to start standing in the future, then manage the present from the future. What we've now done under the economic transformation program, we've painted the picture clearly for everyone to say, this is how that future look like, standing there. And we're so vivid about it. For example, we even painted the picture how KL will look like. We've said there are 10 million people in Kuala Lumpur by the year 2020. We'll have MRT in Kuala Lumpur. We've cleaned the river of life. We would have planted 100,000 trees within the city. So we have made that so clear. Now that we have painted that picture, standing in that future, we then turn back and said, what do we do with the present to get to that future?
Yes.
And that's how we started working it backwards.
Right.
So we've laid out the clear foundation for what we needed to do to get that going.
Yes.
And I am of the view that Malaysia has reached a crossroad in its history. The clarity of what we put out for what we intend to do and stand for the future. It's true that our present is colored by our past, but we have to choose the colors of our future. We made the choices, and we made a clear roadmap to getting there. And I'm of the view if we do two things, we'll get there. One is focus on those areas that we talked about, the NKEA. Two, create the competitiveness, the conditions for competitiveness to flourish, the 51 strategic policy reforms. But when we start doing that, we cannot just do it one night and forget about it. We have to keep doing it.
But when you create those conditions, I would argue that one of the key ones is that you are standing on a very solid foundation.
Yeah.
And it's timely at the moment because you see what is happening in countries in Europe as far as their sovereign debt goes. You see that their competitive edge gets eroded because of their debt levels. Now, we have a ceiling to our certain debt level, but Oliver, do you think that public debt, how much money the government has borrowed, is a factor in determining how globally competitive you are?
I'm not in a position to answer that when it comes to Malaysia. I would say it is important for sure. Look at what's happening in Europe today. Look at what's happening in the US. It's very clear that the levels of public debt, of private debt, are clearly hampering their competitiveness. Or rather put it differently, they're limiting their maneuverability. So absolutely debt is central. I actually wanted to focus on a slightly different point when it comes to the foundation, which we haven't touched on, which is the role of, even more role of the private sector, and in particular, regional and global champions. This is something that is critical. Malaysia already has several. For example, Petronas, one of the new 7 sisters in the oil and gas industry, according to Financial Times in 2008. You have the likes of CIMB, one of the multi-local ASEAN banks. So you have AirAsia, several others.
Plantations.
Yeah.
Plantations, IOI,
telecommunications,
Simon, and Maxis, and so forth. So I think you have several of these global and regional champions already. They are very, very important in driving the innovation in their sector and driving that global expansion and giving some of those opportunities to the graduates that we talked about. Sure. So I think this is something to me that is a strength today and something that merits even further pushing.
We also have to consider the idea that as we go ahead, we want to take into account that whatever we do, we need to do in a sustainable manner.
Sure.
I'm not just talking about the green aspect of sustainability, but that we don't get ahead of ourselves, that we pace ourselves. Can you recognize really for your work in creating built environments with the sustainability as a key part of that? Is there something that we can learn, that policymakers or businesses can learn in reference to the way you put together one of these sustainable environments?
Oh, I see. Well, I think cross-discipline is extremely important. You know, I was trained as an architect, but I had to study ecology. So I'm both an ecologist as an architect. And then, but there must be preparedness to learn things, to learn new things, to go forward. For instance, when I started business about 40 years ago, I knew absolutely nothing about doing business. So I spent a good part of my evenings, maybe 3 nights a week for nearly a year, going to the Malaysian Institute of Management to learn management. So I did almost an equivalent of an MBA, and that gave me the confidence. It gave me the feeling to compete, because at the time, 40 years ago, there were the big firms, the big 5, the big 8, you know, and they knew how to do business better than me. But they knew how to do business intuitively. They learned it through trial and error over the years. But if you go to management school, you learn it within a very short period of time, systematically. So that means I was able to compete systematically, and you know, it doesn't guarantee success, but it means that if something goes wrong, at least you know what you've done wrong, you know, to go from there. But there are 2 things that I think is in our advantage. First of all, we're an English-speaking country. A good number of people, you know, can speak English extremely well. Can you imagine what it's like being in Jakarta or in Thailand, where, you know, doing business is, you know, internationally, it's extremely difficult. Even for the Japanese, you know, a lot of Japanese architects never get to the world stage because they can't speak English. They can't speak in public in English. They need to have a translator, need an interpreter, and you know, when foreign clients, you know, whether from the US or from the UK, employ a Japanese architect, if he or she can speak English, then you have to employ an interpreter. So that's sort of, you know, makes it a lot more problematic. So that's the first thing. But the other thing I noticed as being a international traveler, it's geographically we're extremely well located.
Yeah.
Overnight, I can be in the UK. I leave here the last flight, at a crack of dawn I'm in the UK, by 11 o'clock I can be in New York, or I can be in Tokyo. So with that, we should take advantage of this, you know, geographical location to become globally competitive.
So clearly, there is a lot going for us. We've discussed a lot of things. There's a lot going for us, and we know, of course, that there are things that we must work on. Now, if you had a bucket list of reforms that you would like to see in Malaysia, in your lifetime, you would like to see at least one, what do you think that might be?
For me, it's more that I prefer that Malaysians start not quarreling about the small domestic cake, but we look at the whole global market as our oyster.
Yes.
We shouldn't be vortex into just these arguments. We should be saying, how shall we ensure that the Malaysian products and services compete and win in Germany, in the whole of Europe, in the whole of China, in the whole of America. That is the obsession. And so I would like us to become that, actually.
Ken?
Wonderful.
What reform would you like to see?
Well, I'd like to see a greater effort in building confidence in at every level, starting from, you know, very young, you know, to the professional people. Once the confidence level is there, you know, the talent will come out. That's the first thing. Second, I think, is there should be a greatest focus, as Dato Idris says, on innovation. Now, innovation is not about technology. It's not just about product. It's about process as well. And so we should look at innovation not just, you know, in the hardware, but also in the software and in the other aspects of the academia and in the professional world. Then finally, I think we should travel much more. There should be great exposure, because when you give this exposure to the younger people or even to older people, then, you know, then suddenly competitiveness increases. You know, because that's what they can do. I can do much better, extremely much better than anybody else. And so I think that this competitiveness can only come in sometimes, not just in attitude, but also by giving exposure to the people.
Okay. Let me bring the show to a little close right now, because we are. It is an exhaustive topic, and we could actually be sitting here for days and days and days and have enough to, you know, have more television time than Downton Abbey, I think, or something like that. But I'm going to just keep it going a little bit longer and get a sense from you. There is this, when you are one Malaysian, sitting and looking at all the things that the government is doing, and there is this call to be more competitive, you sort of think, well, I'm just one person. What is it that this one person can do to become globally more competitive? What advice would you give? 2
advice. The first one is, for that individual person, set seemingly impossible targets for him or her. She should set the target. and then second, for that person to have the discipline to do it. That's the two things. So it's, if everyone in Malaysia was to set seemingly impossible targets for themselves in their own work, and then they have the discipline to go and do it,
Yes.
then we will get there.
Oliver, I'm going to let you have the last word.
I'm actually in the same camp. One of the things that I've learned living in Malaysia 6 years, working here is, and this is special in Malaysia, this setting these almost impossible aspirations and then just doing it.
Yeah.
So if I had one piece of advice to Malaysian graduates would be dream big, work hard, and you might just get there.
Wonderful. All right. With that, we have to conclude our session. For all the viewers out there, I hope you have enjoyed the discourse among our panel and that it will in turn inspire debate and discussion on how we as a nation will develop and grow our presence from a global perspective. From Dato Sri Idris Jala, we've had the input of the policymakers who balance that quest with other domestic demands of the country. Oliver Tonby of McKinsey & Co. have been providing some very valuable insight from a regional perspective. And Dato Dr. Yeang, architect, teacher, visionary in the true spirit of Merdeka. Thank you, gentlemen, to all of you for being here today. What we have covered is far from exhaustive, but I hope that it is enough to prompt you to share some of your own thoughts with us. The Merdeka Award is on Facebook. Our next roundtable is scheduled for the third quarter of this year. Until then, I'm Bettina Khan. Thank you for being with us. Salam. Goodbye.